How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today we're reacting to this video called Sony is trying to kill Helldivers 2 with retroactive PSN account enforcement. Here's why it matters. So, without further ado, and if you do enjoy this content or want to see more content like this, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell to stay up to date with all content I release. If you want to recommend stuff, head over to my Discord. There's a section over there where you can put recommendations for React content, and we'll get it to it. All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
Sony has decided that it wants to ruin Helldivers 2 and any small amounts of goodwill that it's accumulated over the years with the PC community. It wants to ruin its image as a company in general because they now want you to link your PSN account in order to play Helldivers 2 on Steam. It is a requirement. You cannot play if you do not link your Steam account beginning the 9th of May on a game that when you bought it, you didn't have this requirement. This is a huge deal. This is a huge problem that needs immediate action. And I'm going to explain just how important this is.
Now, there is one thing that, we actually do need to clarify, right? Now, I've seen it through, like, the stuff that I've received when I got my review copy. I can't go too much into detail about that, but PSN was a requirement from then, but we were told that it doesn't work. Now, I didn't really check on Steam. From what I remember, it was there. But a lot of people are saying that it was, from what I remember, it was made perfectly clear that it's not going to be available at launch because there is a bug with the linking process and that it will come at a later date. So for now, everyone can play it without having to use a PSN network access to connect. And that kind of got lost in the wind. So I think that needs to be really critically addressed, because if that's not the case, then Sony has a lawsuit on their hand. If that is the case, he is factually wrong. I mean, and the whole debate just falls down, right? That one point right there of whether it was made candidly clear that this was going to be a requirement is very important. And from what I remember and speaking to other people, it was made clear, but it was like on blog posts and stuff like that. But, it's really important that this is defined, because this is literally what the whole of this, disaster hinges on. Obviously, then there's people who bought into it, and if it was known, they bought into it with the knowledge that PSN would be required at a later date. Even if it was constructive notice under law, that is deemed as given notice. The information was there, you just didn't seek it out. So it's really, really tricky to try and circumvent this. So people need to be very careful about what they're saying.
In an order of least worst to the most incredibly bad parts of it, because there is no good part here. So hi, I'm Mugthief. My hair is a mess, I am aware. Don't talk to me about it, we have way bigger fish to fry today. I'm also really angry, but I'm going to try and explain this, calmly. So what does this PSN requirement mean? Well, if you have a PlayStation Network account, you must link it to your Steam account and input it in the game. You must log in order to continue playing. If you don't have a PSN account, you have to make one. Otherwise, you can't play the game. Now, this is already pretty bad. I don't know if you guys are aware, but PC gamers don't generally like having multiple accounts. People hate Uplay because of its launcher. Some people don't buy Ubisoft games because even if you buy them on Steam, you have to go through Uplay's launcher and have a Uplay account with a separate password and all.
And honestly, that is the big problem. It's got nothing to do with the PlayStation hacking. It's got nothing to do with PlayStation requiring you to create an account, because the PlayStation launcher is coming, and this is going to be a thing, right? It is coming. It's going to happen. The whole debate now, outside of those that are legitimately screwed because they don't have PSN in their region, is this. PC gamers don't like using a different account to Steam. They want to give Gabe the monopoly he deserves. And before anyone says anything, he literally said it himself, right? I'm not saying this. I play PC games. I use multiple launchers. But he literally said it himself. PC gamers don't want to use anything else. They want to give Gabe a monopoly so he can do what he wants. That's literally what he just said. I didn't say it. But anyway, going on.
Separate password and all of this stuff. EA, similar story with their launcher. Some people refuse to buy games that come out on the Epic Games Store just because you need a completely separate launcher and a completely separate account, and you have to keep giving all of these people your data. Not to mention that you divide your library from being on Steam to being on a bunch of different platforms, and we don't like that. So already, a lot of people, if Helldivers 2, from the start, had this requirement, would have chosen not to buy it.
But the requirement was there, it just wasn't working. It was never enforced because it wasn't working. It was a bug, and they made that announcement day 0, because I remember that.
They would have chosen not to play it because they just don't want to partake in this behavior. We prefer, when our games, you buy them on Steam and you play them on Steam and there's no other requirements. And I'm sure that if the game had launched in that state, they would have suffered some consequences for it. But it wasn't there at launch. It's being implemented now, retroactively, well beyond the refund period for a lot of people that understandably completely disagree with this because they don't want to give Sony their data, they don't want to link their accounts, or they don't want to make a PSN account to be sort of looped into Sony's ecosystem so that they have their data, which is what they want. They want your data so that in the next data breach that Sony has, I guess it gets stolen by every other hacker under the sun and you can get flooded with terrible emails or hacking attempts or just get bombarded with phone calls every day or something like that.
My dude thinks that Apple, Google, Amazon, and the kind don't sell their data without them even knowing. My dude thinks that his data is strapped away in a vault and no one else can get to it. I'm guessing he's ignorantly ill aware that his data is probably in some offshore account right now waiting to be sold. That's still, to me, a very weak point. I get the whole Sony gets hacked quite, often I think it's like 4 times now in the span of a decade, but that's still not it, because everyone else has had breaches as well, and you're still buying their games.
Logical. But now if you don't get to play the game where you've already invested time and money. Sony claims that this is for the good of unifying the community, for betterment of anti-cheat services on a game that I will remind you includes kernel-level anti-cheat on PC from launch, alright? Don't believe their lies. They just want your data. This is already shitty anti-consumer behavior. This is some of the worst practices I've seen, but we're not even at the worst part. Let's say you live...
And he's 100% right there, by the way. This has got nothing to do with them wanting to create a safer space. I mean, it will provide them with better control in banning players, so you don't have to go to Steam. You can actually report it directly to Sony, and Sony will deal with it outside of Steam, and Steam can't do anything about it because it's now tied to your PlayStation account. But this is all about data. Sony didn't anticipate that this game was going to be successful. They assumed that this was just going to be a run-of-the-mill game and just another thing out there to add to their portfolio. So the fact that it wasn't working at launch, they put it on the back burner as low priority to fix when other stuff was fixed. If they knew that the game was going to be this successful at launch, they would have prioritized this first thing. But other things became more prevalent.
Live in a country that doesn't have PSN, but of course has Steam, and you bought the game in one of these countries. Well, you can't play Helldivers 2 anymore. How could you?
And that's the biggest problem. Those players that bought this game, and if it doesn't have access to Steam, that's a big problem. That's a really, really big problem, because then you can't actually play it. So Sony has to find a way, well, if I said Steam, I meant PSN. Sony has to find a way to enable these players to play, whether it's through means of not requiring it or other means, but they need to find a way to do it or refund their money, and I guess time invested, but I doubt that. But if, like I said at the beginning of the video, and it all comes back to that, if it was public knowledge that this was supposed to be a thing, which I believe it was, and that it was coming at a later date because it was currently bugged in the game and they couldn't get it working, then even those people that can't access the game now legally have no leg to stand on. And I'm seeing people saying, oh, I'm going to take them to court, what, for 30 quid? You're really going to take someone to court for 30 quid?
You can't make a PSN account. It's against terms of service to make a PSN account in a region that isn't yours. And if you live in a region that doesn't have PSN, you can't just VPN and make it in another region, which is already way too much effort than anybody should need. to play a game that they already paid for, but you will get banned. You cannot do that. You just... goodbye. And I'm hoping that there's going to be a big hullabaloo if this goes through, where people who have bought the game and are in those regions are going to get their refunds, and hopefully the refunds of any potential microtransactions that they bought, everything, and we have to make a big stink about it, because these people will no longer be able to play a game that they paid for, sunk hours into, built friendships and communities around, and they're gone. It's disgusting. And they do have to go through.
And I 100% agree with that, right? That what he's saying there is spot on. Sony has to take some responsibility. You know, at the end of the day, whether it was prior known or whether it was, public knowledge, the reality is they should have made this very clear from the get-go. They should have had a bulletin in the game saying, this is a requirement, it's not working. And it should be something that is constantly pumped to the user, right? Something that they will have seen within the first 2 hours and would have questioned it. And then if that was a problem, then they would have issued a refund. Because like I said, constructive knowledge is a thing. At least in the UK, if you have constructive knowledge, which means access to that public information that it was available, then you have no leg to stand on. But I feel like the onus is still on Sony here to make that clear to the consumer that this is going to happen at some point, and you need to make sure that you have access to this in order to play the game, or you are happy with this in order to play the game. And frankly, they didn't, and that's on Sony, and it is kind of scummy, especially when they have in-game bulletins that actually give you information that could have been a stickied information that everyone would have seen the moment they logged in. Something that would be in your face so you know. And they could have done this and they didn't. And that just shows you the underhanded tactics that Sony has chosen in order to get this through while still complying with the law. It's a pretty nasty place to be in, right?
To go through a special process to get refunded, by the way, because they probably already went over the refund period, because this is being implemented retroactively. At the drop of a hat, suddenly things can change and you either deal with them, and the conditions of the game when you bought it don't matter anymore according to Sony, but it gets worse, at least in my opinion.
Okay.
What this is doing is setting a precedent. Have to remember that games like Destiny 2, which are first-party Sony games, they directly own everything there, do not require you to link a PSN account to play on Steam.
This is actually really true.
Which is funded and published by Sony, and they do own the IP, but is not developed by a studio in-house at Sony. They are taking over and using it as their vehicle to present their new strategy of retroactively implementing this bullshit to harvest your data or to get you into the PlayStation ecosystem based on lies. And they are doing it with a game that I love and that I have championed over and over again. They are finding ways to take something that is beautiful, that represents good, healthy, consumer-friendly trends in the live service gaming space. A game about wholesome community building and rallying together to fight off something evil, and turning it into an example for the worst practices available. And that hurts. Let's look at the precedent that...
Now, there is one thing I want to add here. I would almost say 100% certainty that Destiny 2 will not incorporate this. One, it was available before Sony bought them. Two, at the time of its inception, it wasn't a Sony IP. So the whole setting that up, I just don't see it, especially with Destiny 2 being where it is right now. If they implemented something like that, it would pretty much kill Destiny 2 anyway, right? But with the news that Destiny 3 is coming, you can bet 110% that if you are on PC and you want to play Destiny 3, you will 100% need a PlayStation account. Period. That is without a doubt. But PlayStation 2, that's a bit of a stretch for me.
This is Sony preparing you for the future having a PlayStation launcher, or requiring a PSN account in all of their games, and telling you that they are willing to change radically something about a game.
What did I say? It all comes down to that launcher. First it was the trophies, then the overlay, then the PSN requirement. Once all of that has fused, the launcher comes, bada bing, bada boom. And that's when we're going to see the true resilience of PC gamers. Whether it's all talk, or all bark. Because at the end of the day, if they choose to download the PlayStation launcher, then they will instantly become the biggest joke in gaming. Because at that point, the whole, we won't download anything that's not Steam, blah, blah, blah. We don't want Epic, we don't want Ubisoft, we don't want this, we only want Steam, we want it on our monopoly. But the moment Sony comes along and says, no, you're going to download our launcher, and if they yield to that, they will either become the biggest joke in gaming history, and no one will ever take the word PC Master Race seriously, or they're going to become the biggest hypocrites known to mankind, and again, no one will ever take them seriously again. They will just become the clowns of the gaming universe. So it's a really bad place for things. So the only thing that they can do in order to save some face, dignity, self-respect, after all these years of that PC Master Race slogan, is to boycott Sony software. And do you really think that that's going to happen? Do you? Because I don't. I personally think they're going to yield. But time will tell.
That you love, at the drop of a hat, to benefit themselves. And they know that they're the villains here. They know that this is dangerous. But they still see themselves winning on the other side because they are slowly building an empire of games, especially with things like the downfall of Xbox at the moment. They just want to seize as much control. And
this is what I said in my video yesterday. Everyone wanted Xbox gone, right? The whole world wants Xbox gone. Gaming is better when Xbox is dead. You all wanted this Sony empire. You all wanted this Sony monopoly. This is a taste of what that monopoly looks like. And in one way, I'm kind of happy that you're all experiencing it and actually getting the harsh end of the Sony stick, because this is what no competition does. This is what you've been, wanting, championing, desiring, without thinking of the consequences that will come from this. There are severe consequences when someone is left unchecked, with no competition, to do whatever the hell they like. Even Paramount Pictures that they're looking to buy, they've only brought in Apollo because if Sony tries to buy the whole of Paramount with CBS, they will have to go through regulators. But with Apollo taking CBS and removing that aspect from Paramount, no regulators, from what I've been reading, need to get involved. So they're bypassing the whole regulators while continuing to expand their empire. And this is all thanks to you guys by propping them up to be the giants that they are today. I know this sounds condescending, and it's supposed to be, because at the end of the day, the community, the people, are the ones that make this happen. And now Sony is capitalizing on it because it has the power to do so. That's just how this works. If you give someone too much power, they're not your friend. All they care about is the credit card in your wallet and how many times you can swipe that for them to make money. The moment you stop swiping and paying, they don't care about you. Not Microsoft, not Nintendo, not Sony, not Google, not Apple, not Amazon, no one. And the sooner people realize that, even Steam won't care about you. Just putting that out there. No one does, right? Not even Valve. I just want to put that out there because it's an important point to make. Because at the end of the day, this is the consequence, the evolution of what you all desired. And these are the consequences. That's why I've always been championing competition is good. We need competition. In fact, it would be even better if it was a free horse race with Nintendo finally getting off their ass and actually joining the next generation fight. But they're off doing their own thing anyway and making maximum profit, so they don't need to. They're just raking in the money the moment they release any platform with an M on it, or a console with an M on it, or a game with an M on it. At the end of the day, they are printing money like there's no tomorrow. So good on Nintendo for finding their niche and capitalizing on it in ways that no one could. But the reality is, we have a two-horse race. Stadia tried to come in. They fumbled it up hilariously. And now we're stuck with two. And if Microsoft decide to leave, it's going to get a hell of a lot worse for those people that want to play PlayStation games. Prices are going to go up. Console prices are going to go up. And there's nothing you can do to stop it outside of, well, I'm not going to buy it. But people will buy it because they want to play games. It's a vicious cycle, a vicious circle that is self-inflicted.
The way that these things work is that there's pushback here at the first step, but then at the 7th step, it's normalized, and then you get those messages on the internet of people saying, well, what did you expect? It's a Sony game. You knew this when you bought it. And that normalization makes me sick. This is very bad. Like, I can't find the words to express
Didn't I just say that? People will eventually buy it.
Now, some people have said that Arrowhead is also guilty because they bow their head and accept this. And we don't know if they just willingly did this as well, or if they're involved in any capacity, or what they are doing, or if this...
Okay, look, that's a whole lot of BS, right? At the end of the day, they will have signed an NDA restricting them from saying anything. They have a choice. Make everyone unemployed, or keep everyone employed, do the job, build a game that they want to make and are enjoying making, and enjoy what they're doing. The publishing side, the network side, that's all for Sony. They've been tasked with making a game and people having a job. So it might, and they will have signed NDAs if there was any of this information in there for them to know that they literally cannot say. And if they do breach it, there's legal consequences. So whether they knew about it or not is irrelevant. The fact is, it's not on Arrowhead, it's on Sony. So people should stop blaming Arrowhead and going after Sony. Sony is the one that's at fault here, not Arrowhead. And people blaming them and really being super toxic towards them is just wrong.
This is just Sony. We don't know how much blame we can place on Arrowhead as well, but we can definitely place the blame on Sony, and they have to bow their heads to them. And for now, I think that's where the hatred should be very much directed towards. And already
100%.
Steam reviews
Agreed.
are plummeting as people are complaining about this, as it should be. Now I want to highlight that Spitz, which is the community manager over on Discord, sent out this message. It's not like this is the first or even the 14th mainstream game to require a third-party account that takes a couple of minutes to create. But if it's a deal breaker to have to take 120 seconds out of your day to enter an email and password and then forget about it, change your Steam review and make your displeasure known on a platform where it matters. A lot to unpack here. I don't like the way that he's minimizing the issue and towing the corporate line, pretending like they are not trying to steal your data as much as possible, pretending that there are not a very large amount of people that will no longer have access to be in this community anymore because they cannot play the game anymore. I dislike so much about this message, but at least at the bottom he says, change your Steam review and make your displeasure known on a platform where it matters, and that is exactly what we should do. You know what, Spitz? I hate this message, to be honest. I think it's really scummy anyways, but I'm going to choose to look at that last part of that message as you saying that if we absolutely bombard the shit out of this, there is potential for change, and that Sony will react and change whatever they're doing. So,
No, they won't.
that's what we should do. I'm gonna calm down, not get mad at this message in the heat of the moment.
There is no reason to get mad at it. At the end of the day, what he said was factually true. It will take 120. It takes 2 minutes to create an account, whether you like it or not, and that's it, right? So loads of people have PlayStation accounts, and it is what it is. You have an Apple account, you have a Google account, you have a Microsoft account, you have a Hulu account, you have a Netflix account, you have all sorts of accounts. So, you've got a Ubisoft account, EA account, Blizz.net account. If you're playing Diablo, you've got an account everywhere. So one more shouldn't really make that much of a difference. That's what he said. But if you really care, stop coming to the Discord where we can't do anything, is what he's saying. Go to the review panel and bombard them by making the reviews negative. That is literally all you can do. Now, if you want to have a bigger statement as a PC gamer, just stop playing the game entirely. Stop playing the game entirely. Don't log in. There is right now, today, I just checked at 3 p.m., compared to pretty much the whole of this week, there is 7,000 to 10,000 more players playing today than there has been over the course of the week. So I appreciate it's the weekend, more people are at home, but it's showing that it hasn't affected the playing numbers at all. Right? Between Monday and Saturday, it's not affected the playing numbers at all. People are still playing. Whether that's because they want to get their final fix in or whatever is unknown. But what he's saying here is true, because people going to the Discord and spitting vitriol is not going to change things. But I don't think going and bombarding a review is going to change things either. We saw that with Starfield and everything else. It's not going to change things. Right? So, getting angry is no point. The only issue I have here is the fact that people don't have an outlet to actually play the game if they're in a region that doesn't have PSN. They need to be catered for. But this is, again, on Sony, not on thing. And I get he's upset with what Spitz said, but Spitz just pretty much spoke the facts.
We can say things we don't mean. Whatever. Okay? Not gonna talk about your language anymore. And this is exactly what we are supposed to do. So there are two things here that I want to tell you about. Firstly, it is that your outrage, your indignation at things, is a commodity now. The world today trades in outrage as an economy. Your clicks, your views, your reviews, your interaction, your engagement is incredibly valuable. There is a huge economy built on it, and people want you to be outraged. People want you to get mad at things, to have extreme feelings. They want us to be more tribalistic because it leads to better clicks. It leads to better engagement. People want you to find your little echo chamber and not leave it. And hopefully that echo chamber...
IGN Eurogamer, I see you right there.
Chamber includes you being very angry at things, because that's how we siphon the most engagement out of people. And I try my best to be very sensible and reasonable on this channel. I try and make sure that I look at things from a position where I'm not trying to get your outrage over things. Today is different, because today outrage is warranted. If this is the future that Sony envisions for their products, or how they want to obtain more power, more of a presence in gaming everywhere, including on PC, if this is the path they want to take, if they see themselves being successful by finding more ways to force you into their ecosystem or to harvest your data, they will get there eventually. They will not stop until they reach it. We cannot do anything about that, but we can indeed stop the progress. We can slow it down as much as possible, and we can set an example for many other companies to not try the same shit.
It doesn't matter. You just said they will get there eventually, and if once that Sony get there, and they will get there, and people will go to their launcher to buy games, and people will buy games from the PlayStation launcher, whether people agree to it now or not. Once it's happened, gaming as a landscape, especially on PC, is going to change very drastically. But at the end of the day, companies already know that outrage is limited, outrage is finite, and it fizzles down the moment the next outrage comes out. And then everyone forgets and no one cares as the bandwagon goes from one stop to the next. And so all they do is ride it out. That's all they do. As someone who's worked in the games industry myself, I've seen it happen. And you just you just ride it out and wait for the next big dilemma, and then everyone focuses their attention over there, and you just continue silently doing what you've been doing and continue your objective. And Sony will succeed, whether people agree to it or not. It's going to happen. And as he said, all you can do is delay the inevitable. At that point, what's the point of delaying the inevitable? What is it that you're actually achieving?
Perfect world. In an optimistic view of the world, we can stop it outright, because we are the consumers and we have power. No matter how it looks sometimes these days, they are meant to make a product that is good enough for us to give them our money. And without us,
Agreed.
they will not succeed. And when they do this, we should punish them. We should express that we do not tolerate this and we do not want them to get our money in any way possible. So it matters that we act. It matters that we complain. It matters that we leave those reviews and we make a fuss about it. I like to remind people that when the Xbox One came out and said that it was always online and you couldn't share games, Sony whipped up in less than 24 hours their whole marketing campaign to be about how you could share your games, about how it wasn't always online. But if there had not been the extreme backlash to the Xbox One's always online nature, Sony would have pursued it as well, because it's the best.
It's also worth noting that the PS4, when it was coming out, was also supposed to come with the iToy camera, or the PlayStation 2 camera, whatever it's called now. But it was actually supposed to come with the same thing like the Kinect, because they wanted to have something that was rivaling Xbox in that department. And when Xbox showed their showcase first and the reaction that they got, they actually 86'd that in the backstage and remade their whole proposal and the price point on the damn spot, right? I know this pretty much for a fact. And they did that on the spot, behind the curtains, with PR, finance, and everything. They quickly crunched the numbers while Microsoft was going through their presentation. After they saw the backlash, after they saw the tweets and everything coming in through social media, they reacted, they removed the camera, they readjusted the price point for the PS4, and that's what happened. That's how Sony got the leg up originally. They were supposed to have a Kinect-like camera as well with, the console. It was supposed to be there.
For their business. But it was that outrage towards Microsoft that made Sony pivot and forget about Always Online for a while, for an entire console generation. Our outrage can have a significant impact on the future of the industry we love and the games that we love. Make yourself heard. Go to Steam, change your review to negative, but make sure that you say why. It's not just that the game requires your PSN account. If that had been there at launch, we could have just made a decision as sensible customers. But instead, make sure you say that they changed that requirement after launch and locked thousands upon thousands of people out of playing the game. Tell them that they changed the rules of the game mid-game into the worst possible outcome for you as a consumer. Make sure that the story is heard in its entirety, so that they know why you're complaining, and so that future customers that look at those reviews understand not just the state of the game, but the behavior of the company behind it.
And this goes back to what I was saying, right? At the end of the day, if enough people stop playing the game right now for, say, 2 months, no one on PC plays it, no one, then this is going to be a problem for them. But the reality is, that's not going to happen. With over 100,000 people now playing today, it's clear that the majority just don't care. They will create that PSN account, link it up, and continue playing. The only ones that are outraged are the ones on social media because they have a platform to do that. And most of those people as well are only doing it because they want to be in with the cool kids. Honestly, that's the reality of it. There are genuine concerns there, and some of the points that he's made are genuinely correct. But the majority really don't care. They just want to be part of a movement, and they will just go with the flow. And Sony know that. Everyone knows that. If you want to make a genuine stand, you do the one that basically everyone did when the Xbox One was launched. No one bought it. No one went to it. No one touched it until things were changed. It became, and it almost crippled Xbox entirely to the point where they almost discontinued the brand as a whole. That's how you do it. No one played the game. Make matchmaking so difficult that people can't play the game anymore. And at that point, then, and only then, will you potentially, maybe, get a reaction. Or Sony will just shut the servers down and say, well, no one's playing it. Have a good day. We'll move on to our next game. And we've already seen that with Ghost of Tsushima 2, where it says a third-party account is required. And in brackets, it says for multiplayer online and for the overlay. The overlay is used in offline mode and online mode, right? So it's going to be used. You're going to need a PSN account to play Ghost of Tsushima as well. It's going to be interesting to see how people react to that one.
That this spreads and people understand how what Sony is trying to do is outright unacceptable. Make yourself heard on Twitter, on Reddit, on Discord, wherever you want. But make yourself heard because today it matters. Gaming has a history of slippery slopes and somehow always finds a way to dive head first down them. And no, it should not be our responsibility to stop them from doing this. But unfortunately, it falls onto us to do everything we can to stop that slippery slope. Because we know where this goes. If you've been around long enough, you know where this starts and you know where it ends. And please don't let this happen with a game that I think we all love so much, that represents so much good, that represents wholesome communities, that represents people coming together and not being separated because of stupid terms of service and PSN account linking. Make it about a game that's about having fun, about giving consumers what they want, a product worth its price that doesn't prey on your FOMO, have 17,000 microtransactions. There is so much good that Helldivers did and can continue to do instead of being ruined. Don't let this happen here. Don't let this happen ever. I've been Mugthief. Thank you so much for watching.
Well, like I said, there's a lot of good things here, but the reality is people need to band together if they want change. The last time we actually saw any form of change was with the Xbox One, and it worked. But that was a monumental effort. The power that Sony has right now, the monopolistic ways that it has going forward, I just do not see them actually caring or changing. And honestly, I don't see this ever going away. And going forward, I can see them always now requiring a PSN access because that is just the way it is. And it's going to be. And as he said, we can't stop it. We won't be able to stop it. All we can do is delay the inevitable. And at that point, outside of giving Sony a bloody nose or putting developers out of a job, what is it that you're exactly doing? I know that sounds defeatist, and I know it sounds bad, and I know it sounds harsh, and you should still fight for what you believe in. You should still fight for a cause that you feel strongly in. But I have to ask, if it's inevitable and that is where it's going, what are you doing? Like, what's the point? What's the point in delaying the inevitable? Outside of maybe making it difficult and giving a bit of bad PR, but eventually they'll get what they want anyway. Maybe that's enough for some people. Maybe not. Who knows? But that's my thoughts on this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like I said, competition is everything. And if there was more competition, Sony probably wouldn't be able to do this. But the reality is, the community destroyed competition. And this is what you're left with. Can't say we didn't warn you, because we absolutely did. But gaming is the best when Xbox is dead. That was your motto. I guess you're regretting that now. Anyway, see you next time.